Right now, election 2013. As Decision Day approaches this coming Tuesday, we're going to be bringing you comprehensive coverage of all the races to watch this year in our region, including the Westchester County Executive race. Our one-on-one interviews with both the incumbent and the challenger in the race coming up. We will also be joined live by the Nassau County Executive Ed Mangano. He's facing a tough rematch against Tom Suozzi, who's fighting to get his old job back. And later, poor Joe. Was Biden almost replaced by Hillary Clinton? Well, we're learning the backstory to not only that, but also how Chris Christie, how close he came to being the running mate for Mr. Romney and why he didn't make the cut. All that coming up. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. Thank you so much for joining us this Friday evening, November 1st. We're dedicating almost this whole program here to politics in the race for 2013. Several big contests in our region this year, including the New York City mayoral race, the Nassau County executive race, and the Westchester County executive race. And we're asking you at home to join in on our conversation. This election season, which issue will matter most to you come this Tuesday, Election Day? Head over to Facebook and Twitter to sound off. Now, the last time all three seats were up for election, you got to go back to 2009, a year that brought a number of changes. In New York City, Mayor Bloomberg won an unprecedented third term after orchestrating a term limit extension. In Nassau County, Republican Ed Mangano ousted the incumbent Democrat Tom Suozzi. And in Westchester, they saw an upset victory from Republican Robert Astorino, who ousted the incumbent Democrat Andy Spano. As the New York Times put it, just after the election day 4 years ago, voters in two of New York City's wealthiest suburbs, where Democrats had established a stronghold in recent elections, shocked the incumbents by backing virtual unknowns in contests that left one three-term county executive defeated and another, a former rising star, hanging on for his political life. So the question is, will 2013 be similarly surprising? We're going to have to wait till next week to find out, but we start tonight in Westchester and the county executive race. Now, the current exec is Rob Astorino, and he's raised more than twice as much as his challenger, Noam Bramson. But the question is, will that mean he'll win Tuesday? It's unclear because there's really been no independent polling in this race. But according to even Bramson's internal numbers, the race is within the margin of error. For more, let's bring in the county executive himself, Rob Astorino. Rob, as always, I appreciate a few.
Thank you.
Okay, we're in the final stretch here, and I think even though polls are tough to come by, most say you're ahead. And as you know, 4 years ago, the biggest issue was property taxes. I think you're probably closer to this than me, but everything that I've heard anecdotally, let alone seen, it's still the biggest issue.
Yeah.
You've kept your word. You've kept property taxes down. The question, though, is, and I remember 4 years ago, you inherited a bad hand from your predecessor. Why can't the argument be made fairly that in keeping property taxes down, you've had to borrow money to do it, and the same bad inheritance that you did, you're passing on to your successor, whoever takes office?
Well, that's untrue. Well, let me clear that up for a second. And I remember when that said election 2009, it went by like this. But I got two bad gifts from my predecessor on day one. First, the housing settlement. The second was
our favorite subject.
The second was a $166 million deficit, which we had to close. And that was not easy, challenging, but we did it because we acted like adults, worked with the legislature, and passed budgets that did not raise the county property tax levy. The only thing that we have borrowed for is what basically every other community and school district in New York State is borrowing for, and that's for the pensions. Our pension bill went from $3.3 million in 2001 to $81 million last year, to $91 million this year, to $96 million next year. So we borrow for about a third because we can't cash up. Otherwise, we would have to lay off hundreds more people, slash services, and it's not something either I or the legislature is willing to do. But we don't borrow for tax refunds. We have paid that in full. We don't borrow for operating costs like they used to do by draining the reserves. So we broke those bad habits.
In terms of the housing settlement, rather going round and round on this one, at the end of the day, and you've seen the editorials, whether it be from the Journal News, the Times, or everybody, you've been excoriated not because you principally disagree with the ruling that you inherited, but the way you've gone about doing it. And at the end of the day, I haven't found one person who thinks that you're playing a winning hand. And if anything, by going down the road you have, both in tone and in substance, it's going to cost the county, when you add up the legal fees and lost grants, maybe in upwards of $20 million. How at all has the county benefited from this fight?
Well, you didn't read the New York Post editorial, which said, you know what, he's
Fair
standing
enough.
firm.
I omitted the Post, yes.
You're not hanging around with a lot of people in Westchester County who are saying stand firm, because what it would fundamentally do, Richard, is just change everything about each community because of the local zoning codes and restrictions in zoning codes to protect things like overcrowdedness in schools, protect the environment, to protect single-family residential neighborhoods, to protect all of those kind of zoning codes that are there for a reason under the New York State Constitution, and local control of those neighborhoods and land use development. So the question fundamentally is who has the power, or who should have the power to develop.
But rather than the debate, if I could,
Yeah.
over
But
who's right and wrong in it,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, this is a math equation, okay? And you, in effect, don't have the final say-so when it's said and done. They've appointed a federal monitor. You're the one guy who says that there's not an inevitability that at the end of the day you're going to either lose funding.
Changing zoning codes?
Well, you're losing grants
So
here,
what?
and you're also racking up legal
No,
bills
the legal bills are
for a fight you can't win.
The legal bills are $13,908 in 4 years. That's a fact. All the legal bills were spent by Spano, $5 million to fight this and eventually settle something that we're now dealing with because it was so poorly written and gave a lot of authority to the federal government. This is fundamentally a question of extortion, threats. Do we accept those, or do we stick to the facts? Now, we have come to the conclusion that zoning is not exclusionary in Westchester. That doesn't mean there aren't hurdles to build affordable housing. We have been building them. Local communities have been building them. We should be building it, and we are. We have 400 of the 750 units that are basically done and counted for. That's 100 past where we had to be at the end of this year, so we're a year ahead of schedule. So we either change the facts and yield to the federal government, let bureaucrats in D.C. decide how communities are built, or we take the money and say, okay, it's up to you, Washington. To me, first of all, we didn't lose the money because we didn't have it to begin with.
But
it was promised.
Gotten it is the point.
But at what price? That's the point. And I stand firmly on the side of our communities. Now, my opponent has said that we should be compromising, get this behind us, and work with D.C. Well, he's not in the majority, I don't think.